Hello, and welcome to another Crush on Stamping video. My name is Merritt Pissarro, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. Today, we're going to make this Winter Woods Christmas card. I just love the cozy winter feeling that this card evokes. We're going to use several products from the 2018 Stampin' Up! Holiday Catalog. There is the Winter Woods stamp set, and this has several pieces that actually go really nicely with this wintergreen or evergreen tree and a fun greeting. There's also a framelit set, and Crush is actually joining us for the video. Sorry about that. There's also a coordinating framelit set that cuts out different images from the stamp set, and that includes the pine cones and the evergreen boughs as well. You can find these products on page 27 of the catalog. So let's take a look at the card pieces that we will need to create the card. We're using just a scrap of old olive cardstock and also a scrap of Mossy Meadow cardstock. We're going to use some of the Festive Farmhouse Designer Series paper, and that would be a piece that measures 2 3/4 by 3 3/4, and then a framing or layering piece out of cherry cobbler that is 3 by 4. We're going to have 2 pieces of very vanilla cardstock that measure 4 by 5 1/4. So there's 2 of those, and when I cut those, I actually had this strip that was left over from that 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock, and we're actually going to use that for our little tags, so we'll have that. Then there's another strip of the DSP, and this is 1.5 by 5 1/4. And then I chose one more pattern from that pack of paper and used the Everyday Label Punch to punch that out. So I'll show you that punch a little bit more in a minute. And then our base card is made out of the Mossy Meadow, which is 4 1/4 by 11 and scored at 5 1/2. So let's start with the focal point of the card, which is the evergreen tree. So I have the old olive cardstock, and I have our large stamp that is the evergreen tree. I'm going to use some of our Pear Pizzazz ink to ink this stamp up. So we're using 3 different shades of green for the card. And the reason for that is that in nature there's so many shades of green that it just gives you a much more interesting final product. So I've inked that stamp up, and I'm going to stamp that on the old olive cardstock. And then I'm going to go in with this evergreen bough stamp, and I'm going to use the Mossy Meadow, and I'm going to fill in the tree randomly, or kind of following the actual shape of that tree. And it looks like I'm creating a big mess, but once the framelit cuts out the image, you'll see that it actually adds a lot of texture because the framelit is doing the majority of the work. The stamp gave us the rough image for us to use. So I'm going to use the 2 trees out of the framelit set, the outline and the inner piece. So I'm going to take this framelit, that's the inner piece, and put this on here. I'm going to line up that point, and that will give us a nice cutout. And then also the outline image is going to go on the Mossy Meadow. So you'll take these to your Big Shot machine and run those through. Now, I went ahead and did that to save some time. So this is what you have once you've done that. You have your outline piece and your stamped piece. So this is still looking a little flat, so now I'm going to go back in with that bow stamp and just concentrate on the edges just to give it more dimension again. And again, I just really need to focus on the outside edges because the majority of the center and the bottom are going to be covered up. So we've got our green stamping taken care of, and then this will fit onto here. Now, when I cut this inner piece out, what's really fun about the framelit is that it actually creates each of these branches within the cutout. So all you have to do is take your fingers and gently pop these up. I think this was super clever on Stampin' Up's part and has really made the image really come to life. It's very quick and easy to do. So I think, and I hope you can see that there's a lot of dimension there now that that's been done. And when, of course, you layer it on top of the Mossy Meadow piece, some of that darker green shines through as well. So we're going to glue this onto our base piece, and I'm going to use some of the Tombow Mono Multi-Glue. I'm just going to put some dots of glue along the edges and just various places on this base piece or this top layer, but not anywhere where the branches are folding up, because of course that would defeat the purpose of having those pop up. So again, if you just line up at the very top, the top piece, you can then just kind of shift the bottom and whoops, and it will line up really nicely for you. So then I take a clear block and I'm going to set that on there so that that has a moment to dry. Now comes the fun part. We're going to use a product that is called shimmer paint. And Stampin' Up has 4 different colors of shimmer paint. We're going to use the frost white today because that will mimic a snow effect. You want to shake it up a little bit because it is a paint, so it can settle. So I've just given that a quick shake, and then I'm going to just drop a small drop on my clear acrylic block here. I'm using this as kind of like a paper plate. You could of course use something else if you don't want to use your block, but it certainly doesn't hurt it. Then I'm going to use a stipple brush. Now Stampin' Up sold this probably 15 or 18 years ago. We don't currently offer it, but basically if you just get a stiff paintbrush or a Stampin' sponge, you'll be able to recreate this effect. I just happen to like using my stipple brush. So I'm going to take the stipple brush and I'm going to tap into that paint, and then I'm going to pounce, pounce, pounce all over my tree to give it that beautiful freshly fallen snow effect. And of course you can go as heavy or as light as you would like. So then to clean up your block, all you have to do is take it to the sink and just give it a good wash. It actually just rinses right off, and dry your block, and then you have a nice clean block. So I'm going to set our tree to the side so that it has a few minutes to dry. And we're going to continue on with our stamping. So in our card, we need to have a greeting. So I'm going to use the Cherry Cobbler ink and this greeting that says, "Thinking of you this season," which is a nice verse for the inside of your card. And I'm just going to stamp that on our layering inner panel. Whoops. When you don't get a good image like that, all you have to do is turn it over. And this is why if I had glued it to the card, I wouldn't have this opportunity. But because I'm stamping and then gluing, I can actually have a second chance and not waste that piece of cardstock. So there's our greeting. And then we're going to use this little piece of cardstock strip that I told you about. And I'm using a little stamp that was from the Signs of Santa set. It says, "A Joyful Christmas." And I really wanted kind of a little small greeting just to put on the front of the card, but I didn't want to take away from that tree. And this seemed to fit the job perfectly. I'm not doing so good on stamping today. I don't know if I'm just not able to look over the top of the stamp or not. So again, turn it over and I have a good chance at it, but I still blew it. So see, I've been stamping for 19 years. My 19-year anniversary with Stampin' Up was just on the 22nd. So you can see that even with all that, you don't always get it right. But so here's my little greeting, and now we're going to use the Everyday Label Punch. So this is the shape that the punch will actually cut out, and you can find this in the annual catalog. And I'm going to use just this little corner down here to get a little nip out of the corner. So if I angle it, I can just get a little nip out of the corner. And what that's going to do for me is allow this little tag to kind of tuck right up into our tree. So it works really great. So here's our Joyful Christmas. Now with that punch, I also, again, used a pattern from the Festive Farmhouse Designer Series paper and punched one of those out. So that punch, this is how it comes out looking. So it is really cute. Okay, our stamping is complete and now it's time for assembly. So let's start with our Mossy Meadow card base. We're going to go ahead and fold that in half. I will use my bone folder to give it a good burnish. I'm going to glue in or snail in my inner piece, making sure I glue down the bad side, not the good side. So there's that. Okay, now we're going to take our other piece of Very Vanilla and we're going to glue that to the front of the card. And this just gives a nice even frame around your cardstock. And we're going to use this fabulous flannel pattern. I just love this. It just really makes me feel all warm and cozy, like I want a cup of hot cocoa and sit in front of a fireplace and have it be snowing really hard outside. So here is where I'm going to lay that. Then I'm going to take and layer up our other panel. I think this script pattern goes so cute with the flannel. So I'm just going to layer that onto the cherry cobbler layering piece. So it gives a nice even border. Then we'll layer our tree. Now believe it or not, that shimmer paint is dry. It dries very quickly. So that's a nice feature of the product. And we can just glue this directly onto our panel. We're going to take our little tag of A Joyful Christmas. And there is a one of the second layer of branches, and I like to just tuck that right up underneath there. It fits perfectly, and then it just kind of peeks out there. So I really like that. So I wanted to use some embellishments for up in this top corner, so I decided to cut out some holly leaves or evergreen boughs for that top corner, and I chose to go with the Detailed Deer Thinlits dies. This is another product that's featured in the Stampin' Up! Holiday catalog, and in there are these two pieces that will cut out holly berries and little evergreen boughs, and you get two of them, so that makes cutting out multiple pieces very quick and easy. So we have two of these. Aren't they cute? So I know that I want those to go up in this corner, so I'm just going to put some adhesive or snail up there in that corner, and then I can take and tuck these in, or tuck them coming out that corner and get some good there because I've put that adhesive there. Now here's our everyday label, and what we're going to do with that is we're going to cut this in half because really only half of it is showing, and this gets you 2 cards out of 1. So we'll just take and put some adhesive down here on the bottom of our piece, and we can use this to just line this up and move it back and forth to get some good placement. And I chose this solid green pattern because it just really gives the place an eye to rest, not compete with the script or the flannel. Okay, now it's time to put this onto our card. So we have all of this. Now this sheet comes with 220 red rhinestones, so it's a great value. Now to get the rhinestones off of my sheet and onto my project, I like to use my paper snips. And I find that if I just put the tip of the paper snips at the bottom of the rhinestone and just push or slide the rhinestone over, then I can make sure that I get that adhesive to pick up with the rhinestone. So I can put them on my project wherever I want. So again, just sliding it gives me the ability to pick them up with the adhesive, which is of course the most important part of getting it to stick. So there we have our rhinestones on our card. So I think this makes a very charming Christmas card and one that you could easily mass produce. The trees probably take the longest, and those don't take all that long at all. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I want to show you one other card using the cutout of the tree. It is using that greeting again, and I embossed that with some gold embossing powder, cut out some gold foil sheets with another one of the framelits in the set, and then of course did the 2-layer tree again with the stamping, and I also put some of those pine cones in gold on there. Now this is kind of a fun fold card in that you get to enjoy the tree on both sides of the card. So when you open it up, it actually shows on the inside there too. And again, that festive farmhouse just pairs perfectly with the stamp set. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next video.